Welcome to Missing Briefs. I'm Dominic, the founder and the owner of Elevate Business Coaching, a Boston-based coaching and consulting firm that specializes in working with law firms and their lawyers to build, manage, and grow successful practices.
And I'm Bob Furlong. I'm a certified exit planner here at the Bullfinch Group. I help law firms create programs to attract and retain their best associates. And this creates a clear path for succession and retirement for senior partners.
So, Missing Briefs, what's it all about? Well, it's about exploring and narrating the compelling stories or briefs of lawyers who have experienced significant challenges and successes in the business of law. What was their gap? What were they missing? What do they wish they'd known? All that good stuff. And with me today, it's my pleasure to welcome Danielle G. Van Es. Danielle is the owner of DGVE Law, a boutique estate planning firm guiding clients in the areas of wills, trusts, probate, and trust in the estate admin. Her firm is based in the fine city of Hingham, Massachusetts, and has won numerous accolades since it was founded by Danielle back in 2008. Danielle, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you both very much for having me. I'm excited about this.
That's great. So, Danielle, we often want to know like the story behind the story, like how you got to where you are today. So let's kind of go back to the beginning if we can.
Sure.
When was it in your journey that in your life that you decided, hey, I think I want to become an attorney?
So, true story. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer when I was in third grade. I actually drew a picture of myself with crayons as an attorney holding a briefcase, and that was what was pasted on the wall for parents' night when I was in third grade. So, it was a desire to advocate and help other people, and it never left. So, I was very sure I wanted to be a lawyer by high school. And when I walked into my first year advisor's office in college and I said, I want to go to law school, what should I major in? He said, please get out of my office. You're a freshman.
Ah,
And I said, no, really, I have to do 4 years of college before I can get to law school. So what should I major in? And he kept inviting me, not so politely, to leave. And eventually he said, just pick something you like and you're good at and don't let it be poli sci or English because that's what the rest of you pre-law people do. So I majored in Spanish language and literature and double minored in philosophy and women's studies and thoroughly enjoyed it. And then I went straight to law school, just like I said I would.
that's pretty cool. And I like the fact that you chose kind of a slightly different path that probably has worked out well for you. And, when it came down after going to law school and deciding which path you wanted to take as an attorney, what was interesting to you about doing estate planning? What was compelling about that?
Well, so backing up back to high school, I decided I was going to be a domestic violence attorney, as my husband likes to correct me, anti-domestic violence attorney. And that's what I did first. So I was a nonprofit anti-domestic and sexual violence attorney for the first 7 years or so. And then I had a couple of kids, and it no longer made sense for me to be in a nonprofit position like that. And at the same time, I had started to consider my own needs for estate planning for my family. And as I started to talk with friends that were also pregnant and having babies, it came up more and more. And so I kind of accidentally transitioned into this practice area out of personal experience. I became passionate about it when I started to study it and realized that what I had done for my own family was nowhere near what I actually needed. And so started my firm, and my first clients were my friends and people that I was meeting in the same shoes. And so I became really passionate about it, both because I was living it and also my clients were people I cared about. So I would do an estate plan for a family, and the kids that we just planned for would be drooling on the floor playing with my kids. So it was very easy to care deeply about it when you really know the family that well.
So, and when do you see, I'm kind of interested, what do you think is the inflection point when people start really being serious about doing an estate plan? What has to precipitate that?
Often it's pregnancy, often it's having a child and now feeling like, okay, I have to be responsible for somebody else who's not capable of being responsible for, him or herself. That's a common one. A terrible diagnosis, some sort of a medical diagnosis, can be an inflection point. Having observed a family member pass away and either having it be very smooth because the planning was well done, or being an absolute nightmare and saying, I never want to do that to the people that I love and leave them in that situation. I'd say those are the most common inflection points.
Thank you for sharing. That's great.
Sure.
But Danielle, that's so interesting that at an early age, from third grade, you knew you wanted to be a lawyer. You said you wanted to advocate and help for others, and that's really what you did. You did it in the not-for-profit anti-domestic violence arena, which I had no idea that you had done that. And through your own experience, you found about estate planning, its importance, and were able to help all your friends and family. Uh, so I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and just ask you, whenever you were looking to start your own practice, what were some of the key challenges that you faced?
Well, the first one was that I was originally licensed to practice law in the Commonwealth of Virginia and not in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but I was then living in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So after moving back here from DC, trying to decide what my next career path was going to be, the first thing I had to do was take and pass the Massachusetts bar exam.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, my past professional experience, I had taken some time off and I couldn't satisfy the requirement. So I actually had to study for and sit for and take the bar exam with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. And of course, everything, the refrigerator broke, the dishwasher broke, the babysitter fell down the stairs, couldn't help anymore. Everything that could go wrong did in the 6 weeks that I had to study for and take that exam. So that was a challenge. And while I was waiting for the bar results to come back from Massachusetts, I was still contemplating what's my next move. And I was frustrated that I had to go through all of that because the only reason I had taken time off from full-time practice or teaching of law, as the rules say, is because I had 2 babies within that span of time and I moved back from DC to Boston. So I kind of flippantly said to a friend of mine, well, I guess if I pass, I'll start my own firm. And if I didn't, I'm going to take this up with the Mass Bar Association. But I passed, so I started my firm.
Yeah. So you started your firm. At that time, you had 2 kids. What was it like in those early years? So it was like 2008. Like, so you get the bar thing out of the way. But what were some of the other challenges in those early 2, 3, 4 years?
Yeah. So, well, the first challenge was I officially launched after doing all the pre-planning steps, officially launched September 1st, 2008. And then we had the market collapse and entered the Great Recession about 2 weeks later. And I also at that same time discovered that I was expecting my 3rd daughter. So I spent the first year in practice in the Great Recession with credit totally tightened and restricted, and people not wanting to spend money and feeling like my practice area was discretionary.
Yeah.
And just access to capital changed almost overnight at that same time. And pregnancy is not fun for me. I was sick for 3 months straight, but I powered through. And then about 10 months into it, all of a sudden it became really real that I was about to have 3 small children and I was still solo. And so all of a sudden I said, I think I'm going to need some more help. So that was the first year. It was a wild, bumpy ride. In retrospect, I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah.
I think that if I had had ready access to capital, if I had been with a big firm and socked a lot away and had kind of a war chest to spend right at the beginning, maybe I wouldn't have learned to be so scrappy, which I believe to be an essential skill for an entrepreneur. But just the way that things happened, I started very small and very carefully, and that's the way it stayed.
Yeah. So it's interesting as you're talking. I'm thinking sometimes people will say, when is a good time to start a law firm? And the answer to that is there's never a good time. There's always going to be stuff.
That's right.
Life, or it's always a good time to just get started. There's nothing about timing the perfect. I mean, your timing maybe was not particularly ideal, but you got through it. You scrapped your way through it, and you've been able to keep going and going. But scrappiness, starting small, being frugal, but you were successful. You were able to, start to expand a little bit just beyond you. So now I'm going to ask you, we're going to get kind of like get in our time machine, go from like 2008, 9, 10, 11, kids 2 to 3, etc. And here we are in 2025. You're, 17 years into your practice. Looking back and knowing what you now know about your entrepreneurial journey, right? Uh, what would you have done differently?
Oh boy. Um, I think the number one thing I wish I had done differently was to focus more on learning the people skills of management,
Hmm.
of hiring, attracting, hiring, managing other people.
Mm,
When I started, because it was a change of practice area for me, I had to learn a new practice area. So
mm,
the substantive legal knowledge and feeling a lot of responsibility to get it right and dig
Yeah.
deep. And I was having to learn how to do marketing for my firm because it occurred to me that I built it, but they didn't just all start banging down the door, right? So nobody taught me anything about marketing. I never took a single business, accounting, or marketing class. They didn't offer that in the, Spanish language department in college.
mm,
In
mm,
retrospect,
mm.
maybe that wasn't the best choice.
Yeah.
Um, so I was teaching myself how to do my books and I was teaching myself how to market and I was teaching myself the substantive practice areas. And so when I needed help, I hired people that were independent contractors that already knew how to do the things I needed
Mhm.
them to do. And for the first 8 years or so, that's the way that I managed having other people helping me was by not having to manage them, frankly,
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
and asking them to tell me what they were doing or why they would do things a certain way. It was helpful in that it allowed me to do more and grow and focus on other things. But in 2016, I moved my office out of my home where I had been running it with remote contractors into downtown office space here in Hingham. And then I hired people all on site to work with me in the office. And so no more independent contractors. Now I had all full-time W-2 employees, and that was a profound difference and change.
Mhm.
In retrospect, had I spent more time learning how to do that before I launched into it, I think I'd be farther along than I am now in that respect.
Mhm.
That's been a pain point. But I focused really hard on building my systems and processes and all that, behind the scenes stuff, which is
Mhm.
great, and I'm proud of what I've built. And now my learning edge over the past few years has been team. So
Team. What is it they say? There's no I in team, right?
no,
mm.
Teamwork
if
makes
they
the
are, they
dream
gotta
work.
go.
That's
Yeah,
right.
right.
Teamwork makes the dream work, all that good stuff. But while just listening again to kind of, what you playing it back there, people skills, challenging. Not only did you have to become an expert in a new practice area, work from out of your home with young children, you had to learn marketing, uh, bookkeeping, all the stuff, all the stuff that just goes into running the business, and you were able to cover that for a bit using contractors. But ultimately, you find the best way for you has been able to finally get to having those people as WTs, W2s, W2, W
W2.
W2s, and right there with you. So
And I think it's important just because I did have those little kids and then I had one more after that. So I have four daughters.
Wow.
And it was once the fourth was about two, I moved out of the home, but they were not home when I was working. And I
yeah,
Mm,
think that's really important to understand because when they're newborns, you can work.
mhm,
right,
They don't
right.
do anything. They can't go anywhere. You can type over their heads. It's fine. But the moment that they're mobile, it becomes much more challenging. So
mhm,
having childcare was critically important. And my kids started to go to preschool. And as my business grew, it was more preschool. And then after school babysitters and all
Mm,
of that.
mm,
And then
mm,
they were school aged. And
mm,
so in the early years when I didn't have the client base built up yet to be so busy yet, I structured my work to focus when they were in school, and then I'd pause when they came home, and then I'd go back to it after they were asleep. And so it was the work on the business stuff when they were asleep at night. And there were a lot of, grinding hours
Yeah.
from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the early years getting that done.
Well, it's interesting. We talk all the time about the importance of running a practice as a business because everything is a business. And the fact that you figured that out, that it's hard because I'm going to go out on a limb. Do you have a class in law school that addressed some of that stuff that you had to figure out on your own?
I self-taught, not a
Yeah,
single class that I recall that taught me anything that was practically useful about running a business. I read J.G. Foonberg's How to Start and Build a Law Firm
sure.
cover to cover several times. And then I promptly did the opposite of a lot of the advice in that book.
Right,
I
right.
was working with contractors who were virtual and remote before that was cool. I was working exclusively out of a dedicated home office before anybody was doing that. I was actually featured in the ABA Journal
Hmm,
magazine in, I want to say it was 2010,
hmm, hmm,
because it was so unusual to be working from home with
hmm.
the way that I was doing it. But I took where a window was in my house and built a door to have a separate entrance to the office.
Wow,
And,
wow.
I really did structure it as a dedicated space that way. But I I tossed a lot of the solid advice out and did it my own way.
But it's also impressive that you understood that you need a top-notch team or you're working all the time. So having really good people who are committed that are W-2 as opposed to kind of, here that this is that's their main focus is working with you is probably again probably paid off the dividend of making that kind of it's not always easy for law firms we see to make that kind of commitment, but it's usually one of the most important things to like turn the corner and be really profitable.
And
And
it's scary. It's scary
mm,
committing to providing for somebody's livelihood when you know that they're relying on it and you
mm,
haven't seen the return on it yet. But such is the entrepreneurial journey, right? It's
Right. Keep the faith.
buckle in.
and the number one responsibility of an employer is to employ people, so in along that vein, in the end of the day, a law firm like any other kind of business needs to get the right business, needs to work with the right type of client. So when people will watch this or consider you for introduction, how do you like to be introduced to a client? How do you like to come into their world? What's like your process a little bit? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of good information on my website, which I think is helpful instead of just being that, business card. There are videos that introduce people to me to get a taste of, can I stand the way she speaks? Is she going to irritate me? Because there needs to be a desk side fit, and I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But it also outlines our process and communication and what to expect and frequently asked questions and things like that. So that's really helpful. I would say I don't have, a particular type of client that I only work with, but all of the clients I work with must be nice.
Ah, I
It's
love
too
it.
short. Life is too short. I don't have time or energy for people that want to be rude or dismissive to me or my team. I prefer working with people who value legal counseling and advice. It is transactional in the sense that there's a start, a middle, and an end of a planning engagement or a post-death administration engagement. But when I connect with clients, we build a professional relationship and it
Mhm.
lasts for a long time. So I am now doing estate plans for the children of my clients from 17 years ago.
Wow. Wow.
Um, and even grandchildren now, the 18 plus when we're doing, a very, very limited scope, flying the nest, as I call it, plan for the young kids. So, it's valuing the advice, valuing the relationship, and seeing beyond just how much do you charge for a will package, and can we really talk about what do you have going on and what do
Right.
you need, and helping. So a referral and connecting would be not just here are three lawyers and
Mm,
ask them
mm.
how much they charge for this, that, and the other thing, but understanding whether somebody really just wants the cheapest package transactional, or are they
Right.
really looking to develop a professional advisory relationship long term and seek counseling.
So working with nice people, that's great. We're in alignment with you on that one. For those who are listening or watching the podcast who want to reach out to you, could you share your contact information now so that they can quickly jot it down and then reach out to you? What would it be?
Thank you. So my website is my initials, the firm name, dgvelaw.com. And all of the contact information is there. The best email address to use for a fast reply is info@dgvelaw.com. And my LinkedIn profile is also conveniently /DGVE Law. So we have social media presence on all the different places, and it's always just DGVE Law.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And I've loved being able to get to know you, to learn your story about the sacrifices that you've made, how you've been able to navigate all those challenges. And I also love to hear you say that you're proud of what you've built, and you're already seeing the next generation coming through, and you're able to help them as well. So, so congratulations on all you've accomplished. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So if you're listening and you have an interesting story to tell about the triumphs and the trials of owning your own firm, or perhaps you know somebody else that does have information that would be helpful to share about their own trials, have them get in touch with us. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Bob Furlong.
Until we meet again.